In September 2023, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau publicly accused India of being involved in the assassination of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar, in British Columbia. Mr. Nijjar was a prominent figure in the Sikh separatist movement in Canada, which advocates for the creation of Khalistan, an independent Sikh state centered around India's Punjab region. When Trudeau made his allegations public, he did not disclose concrete evidence, and his claims were met with fierce rejection from India, which in turn accused Canada of sheltering Sikh extremists. As a result, Canadian-Indian relations reached an unprecedented low point. Diplomats were withdrawn, visa issuance was paused, and protests erupted in both countries. But what began as a Canadian-Indian conflict expanded in scope 2 months later when the United States released an indictment accusing an Indian government agent of conspiring to assassinate another prominent Sikh separatist leader in New York. These accusations come at an awkward time. Canada, the US, and other Western countries have worked to deepen their economic and strategic partnership with India for years, especially in the Asia-Pacific, where there is a common interest in containing China's regional ambitions. But the resilience of this partnership has long been questioned, because there are many issues that could divide India and its Western partners, including India's conflict with segments of the Sikh diaspora in the West. But why do some Sikhs want to establish a separatist state in India? How did this issue evolve from an intra-Indian conflict into an international one? And what does this issue mean for the future strategic relationship between India and the West? To find out, we must first explore the history of this conflict. Let me just quickly check the internet for information and oh no, spam emails again? If only there was a way to stop these damn data brokers from collecting my data. Wait, what's that? It's this video's sponsor, Aura. Aura is a tool that helps you stay safer online. Your full name, email, home address, and even health records. Data brokers try to suck that information out of your online activity and then sell it to scammers, spammers, or even worse, that one crazy ex you have. But not with Aura. It shows you which data brokers are selling your information and automatically submits opt-out requests for you. Ha! Take that, Nigerian princess. Cleaning your information with Aura not only helps you to reduce spam, but also protects you from hackers who could use this information to try and get access to your social media accounts or even bank accounts. But politics, I'm very responsible with my data. Perhaps, but what if there is a big data breach? Just recently, AT&T revealed that over 72 million customer records were stolen and released on the dark web. They recommended those affected use strong passwords, monitor account activity, and consider credit freezes or fraud alerts from credit bureaus. Aura does all of this at once. You don't even have to download several apps just because one company couldn't keep your data secure. If you value your online privacy, you can go to aura.com/politicswithpaint to start your 2-week free trial, also linked below in the description. Thanks to Aura for sponsoring this video, and now let's explore the history of Sikh separatism. In the late 15th century, South Asia was deeply divided in many ways, politically, religiously, and by caste. One man who sought to overcome these divisions was Guru Nanak, a revered spiritual leader of his time and the founder of Sikhism. He believed that by following the teachings of the Guru, one could establish a relationship with the Creator, transcend artificial human divisions, and end the cycle of birth and rebirth. Guru Nanak's teachings eventually found a small following in his native region of Punjab, and after his passing, 9 successor gurus built upon the foundation he had laid. As Sikhism spread in the Punjab, its believers would periodically endure brutal persecutions by local rulers, especially by the Muslim Mughals, who ruled this region for around 200 years. In response to these persecutions, Sikhs gradually adopted military traditions to defend their faith, which were cemented by the last human guru through the establishment of the Order of the Khalsa, a special community of initiated Sikhs tasked with preserving the faith and protecting its followers. The Khalsa was deeply influential on Sikhism in many ways. It introduced the 5 Ks to Sikhism, giving many Sikhs the distinct look we know today, and it's also where we get the term Khalistan from. Subsequently, Sikhs gained notoriety as capable warriors, while the Mughal Empire began to crumble. The Mughals' decline allowed Sikh leaders to establish their own small states, and under Ranjit Singh, a unified Sikh empire emerged which stretched over much of what is today northern Pakistan and India. But in 1849, this state was subjugated by the British and incorporated into British India. The colonial period was a formative time for the Sikhs, as their leaders sought to consolidate a distinct Sikh identity by getting legal recognitions as their own religious group distinct from Hindus. This often led to tensions not only with the Hindus, but also with the British, who didn't want to upset the Hindu majority and saw both in one category anyways, mine. but this view was challenged in the early 20th century with the spread of the Indian independence struggle. The common Indian dream of independence finally became reality after World War II, but soon turned into a nightmare as the subcontinent was partitioned into a majority Muslim Pakistan and majority Hindu and non-Muslim India. Some Sikh leaders argued for the establishment of a third Sikh state as well, but were ultimately rejected. The partition of India was an extremely violent affair, and Punjab was right at the center of it as the new border split the region between the new two states. Centuries-old economic, spiritual and familial ties were suddenly severed and the demographics of the region changed completely. Pakistan's Punjab became almost entirely Muslim, while India's Punjab was now dominated by Sikhs and Hindus, and the latter two groups would increasingly come in conflict with each other. The Sikhs were worried about being assimilated into the Hindu majority, which is why they sought legal recognitions and political rights as a separate group, while Hindus were concerned that Sikhs would dominate Punjab politically and economically if their demands were agreed to. Over the next decades, negotiations between Sikh leaders and the Indian government yielded few results, especially during Indira Gandhi's time in office, who sought to centralize more power in the capital New Delhi. Even when compromises were made, they were usually stalled and ultimately fell apart. Such was the case with the 1966 administrative reorganization of East Punjab. It divided the region into 3 states, 2 majority Hindu and Hindi-speaking ones, and a new smaller Punjab state that was majority Sikh and Punjabi-speaking. This was supposed to satisfy Sikh desires for autonomy, but in the end excluded some important territories that Sikhs expected to be part of the state. The growing feeling of discrimination among Sikhs and the economic mismanagement of Punjab soon motivated large numbers of Sikhs to seek a better life by emigrating abroad, especially to North America. Despite the distance, many in this diaspora continued to care about the situation in Punjab, which continued to deteriorate and allowed more radical voices to come to the forefront. One such voice was Justin Singh Nijjar, a radical preacher who mainstreamed a much more militant approach to achieve Sikh demands, which he equated to the Sikh resistance against the Mughals. This was an extremely worrying development for India's government, which already had to contend with various violent movements across the country. The increasing inter-religious violence made Indian authorities in Punjab become even more repressive, and so the state gradually turned into a giant powder keg that finally exploded in 1984 at the hands of 2 major events. The first was Operation Blue Star, a military operation ordered by Indira Gandhi to get Bhindranwale and his armed followers out of the Golden Temple complex in Amritsar, the holiest site in Sikhism. Bhindranwale and his followers had retreated to parts of the complex 2 years prior to avoid arrest, and the operation was supposed to surgically remove them. Instead, it evolved into a bloodbath which significantly damaged and desecrated the Golden Temple and resulted in the deaths of Bhindranwale and his followers, many Indian soldiers and innocent pilgrims. Unsurprisingly, this outraged Sikhs across the world. The second event was the assassination of Indira Gandhi. She was killed a few months later by her 2 Sikh bodyguards in revenge for Operation Blue Star, which sparked violent anti-Sikh riots, especially in the capital New Delhi. After these events, disillusioned and economically disenfranchised Sikhs flocked to militant groups that were now openly fighting for an independent Khalistan, while some segments of the Sikh diaspora began conducting campaigns in their support, with some organizations even directly providing militant groups with funds and weaponry, which Pakistan did too, by the way. The situation in Punjab only began to normalize in the late 1990s for 2 main reasons. Firstly, the Indian government started a large-scale military operation that was notoriously harsh but kept a tight stranglehold over militants in the region. And secondly, Khalistani militant groups lost the limited support they had within the Sikh community. As the insurgency progressed, these groups fractured as they had different visions of Khalistan and increasingly turned to street gang-like behavior, often hurting regular Sikhs the most while achieving nothing of worth for them. Although Sikh separatism almost completely died out in Punjab, the spectre of Khalistan did not go away entirely, as the idea was kept alive within some segments of the Sikh diaspora. It's difficult to say how widespread support for Khalistan is among the diaspora, but experts estimate that at the height of the conflict it was around 25% at most. This minority within a minority continues to closely observe what's happening in Punjab for possible signs of renewed interest in Khalistan, and that is a growing concern for India because of one particular reason: the internet. Over the past decades, the internet has allowed pro-Khalistan organizations to better connect with each other and the Punjabi homeland. and since thousands of Indians get access to the internet every day, this represents an opportunity for these groups to exert influence even from far away. This was demonstrated in 2020 with the start of the massive farmer protests in Punjab and northern India. The protests were aimed at 3 farm acts that were passed by the Parliament of India, and Sikhs were quite overrepresented since they make up a big chunk of North India's farmers. But almost immediately, these protests were instrumentalized by all sides. Activists from the Sikh diaspora began portraying the new laws as an attack on Sikhs specifically, although non-Sikh farmers were impacted as well, while some Indian politicians accused the protesters of being Khalistan supporters to delegitimize their grievances. All of this made the Indian government pay much closer attention to what is happening within the Sikh diaspora abroad, and that caused some minor diplomatic incidents in the past already. But with the recent accusations from Canada and the US, this conflict seems to have entered a new chapter, which brings us to the situation we have today. One of the big questions that arose after Trudeau's speech in 2023 was, why did he choose to make these accusations in such a public way without disclosing any evidence, knowing that this was sure to cause a diplomatic crisis? Why didn't he wait for the Americans to make the accusations with the indictment to back him up? Well, there are a few possibilities. Maybe he wanted to get ahead of the Canadian media, which may have gotten wind of the story's connection to India. Maybe he wanted to unify Canada behind him as his minority government had a low approval rating. Or maybe he believed that this was the only way to make the Indian government take this issue seriously. The truth is, we don't really know. What we do know, however, is that the subsequent diplomatic crisis demonstrated how fragile the relationship between India and the West really is. To understand why that is, we have to consider that the current strategic partnership between both parties is a relatively new phenomenon. Throughout the Cold War, India was keen to stay outside the 2 main power blocs, which is why it was a founding member of the non-aligned movement together with Yugoslavia and Egypt. But despite its neutrality, India did not shy away from building a relationship with the Soviet Union, while the US and its Western partners cooperated with India's rival Pakistan. It was only in the 1990s that India and the West began to reconsider their relationship, for economic reasons, but also because of a big geopolitical development, the rise of China. India and China have quite a few problems, especially regarding their border, which is something I also made a video about, which you can check out later. So it's not very surprising that today India is part of the Quad, a security dialogue between India, Japan, Australia and the United States aimed at fostering security cooperation between its members in what they call the Indo-Pacific. So in other words, aimed at containing China. But outside of this goal, India and most Western countries don't really see eye to eye that often. Issues like India's close relationship with Russia throughout the Ukraine war and accusations of military espionage have occasionally shaken the partnership, with the newest issue being the murder plot accusations in North America. And while extraterritorial murder plots seem to be all the rage on the world stage at the moment, this case is still odd for 2 reasons. Firstly, because of the sheer importance of India's strategic relationship with the West and the United States in particular. Was India really willing to risk alienating such a powerful and strategic partner just so it could eliminate some Sikh separatists in exile whose ideology has very little support in Punjab anyways? And secondly, because the extent of the alleged Indian involvement is still unclear. Was India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his government aware of these activities? Was it perhaps only a specific ministry or department that knew of it? Or was it a rogue agent that acted on his own? In response to the US indictment, India announced the start of its own investigation, and shortly before the release of this video, the Indian government claimed to have found the people responsible, and among them is at least one senior Indian intelligence agent, which according to New Delhi acted without authorization from the government. Whether these individuals will face trial in India or be extradited to the United States is still unclear, but no matter the outcome of these investigations, the damage to the Western-Indian partnership is already done. The question is, how much was it damaged? Well, that depends on who we are talking about. The Canadian-Indian relationship was no doubt hit the hardest. For one, a Canadian citizen was allegedly murdered with the help of a foreign government within Canada, which would be a significant violation of Canada's sovereignty. For another, nowhere else in the West are Sikhs such a significant and influential minority. Sikhs make up close to 3% of Canada's total population, which is a bigger share than Sikhs have in India, and Sikhs are also highly represented in Canadian politics across all political levels, parties and the government, and that means that any issue affecting Sikhs abroad has a bigger political weight in Canada than it has in any other Western country. It also didn't help that the way Trudeau made his announcement in 2023 was seen as a grave insult in India. This, combined with the fact that India doesn't consider Canada to be as important of a partner as the United States, is why India is still being so dismissive towards Canada on this issue. The US and India, in contrast, chose to keep this issue at a much lower intensity level. The US government stressed that it takes this issue seriously, but also emphasized that it sees India as an important strategic partner. And India responded by quickly organizing its own investigation and showing goodwill to rectify the situation, at least with the US. Other Western countries, meanwhile, were reluctant to get directly involved. The UK and Australia, for example, released only vague statements expressing concern and calling for restraint. All of this left Canada pretty isolated in their conflict with India, which shows how important most Western countries consider their partnership with India and the potential it holds for the future. However, this does not mean that the Western-Indian partnership could not deteriorate in the long term if the conflict between India and Khalistani activists abroad escalates. The Sikh diaspora continues to grow across the West, even in places where there has been a limited Sikh presence thus far. In recent years, India signed several migration agreements with various European countries, and as has been the case before, economically disenfranchised Sikhs have used this opportunity to build better lives abroad. If this trend continues, it could lead to Sikh issues gaining more political relevance in more Western countries, similar to how it is in Canada today. And although most Sikhs abroad do not support the idea of Khalistan, there will inevitably be a growing and vocal pro-Khalistan minority that could increase animosity between more Western countries and India. But to really threaten the Western-Indian relationship, there would also have to be a resurgence of the Khalistan movement in Punjab, which by now has become a fringe ideology with little support among India's Sikh population. Nonetheless, the underlying problems that enabled the rise of the Khalistani movement in the 1980s persists even today. But if the specter of Sikh separatism returns, would it be enough to destroy the strategic partnership between India and the West? On its own, probably not. For the West, the potential partnership with India is too valuable to give up. India has become the world's fastest growing major economy with a relatively healthy demographic structure, and its strategic position is vital for the Western quest to contain China. The West, meanwhile, presents a unique opportunity for India to grow its economy much quicker, access the latest technology and military equipment, and also relieve pressure from its border with China. However, Khalistani separatism won't be the only issue that will strain the Western-Indian relationship. Combined with other problems, such as India's close relationship with Russia, it could eventually lead to the end of this partnership. Western-Indian relations and the issue of Khalistani separatism are extremely complex topics, and there are many aspects of it that didn't make it into this video. If you are interested in a more detailed history of Sikh separatism, you should check out Cogito's informative video on this topic here, and if you are interested in the situation between Canada and India specifically, check out JJ McCollin's video here. A big thank you to all my patrons and channel members. Their support is important for keeping this channel going. If you want, consider becoming a supporter as well. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.